Hi out there, this is Grandma Sarah again. So I wanted to do a little different today. We're going to bake some bread, except we're not exactly going to bake it. I started thinking about no electricity, don't have an oven. What are we going to do if we want to have some bread? Well, I don't have any of the, let's see what I'm thinking, cast iron where you could bake bread if you had a cast iron pot. So I went to the store, actually got this off at Amazon, and it's canned bread. And it's basically a form of steamed bread. So I looked up some recipes, and by the way, I made a mistake. I couldn't find it in my local store, so I ordered it from Amazon, and Amazon was over $10. And then a couple days ago, I happened to be looking around the store, and over by the baked beans, they had the same bread, and it was only $4. So look around, you could probably find it a lot cheaper locally if you don't want to make your own. But back in the Northeast, up in Maine and Massachusetts, they have a type of steamed bread. My brother had sent me this little cookbook several years ago, and I started looking at it, and because it has some old-fashioned recipes, and it has 15 different types of steamed bread, and you put them in tin cans, and then you steam them for 2 hours, and you end up with a bread. So I've never done this. This will be a big experiment, and we get to do this together. The big thing with steamed bread, or these kinds of breads, is you need to use whole grain flours, because if you use a white flour, the book says it gets a little bit too sticky. So we're going to do the basic standard brown bread on this time. So we have 3 different kinds of flour, and there again the same kind of thing. It wants pastry whole wheat flour. On Amazon, 5 pounds of this was $20. We happened to be in Tucson for a doctor's appointment, so I went to Whole Foods, and I got this 2-pound bag for $3. So it's a lot cheaper if you can find it locally. So we need to have whole wheat pastry flour, and we need to have dark rye flour, and we're also going to use corn flour. So you want to mix those together well. Before you add any liquid. And just a point for people who don't bake or you do this locally much, if you're using any kind of dry flour measures, you need to use this kind of measuring cup for dry. And if you're using liquid, then you use this kind of measuring cup for liquids. You don't intermix them. They're not exactly equivalent. So one's for liquid, one's for dry. Once you have this well mixed, then you're going to add the liquid. Now we want to use buttermilk, so we have 2 cups of buttermilk, and to the buttermilk we're going to add 2 teaspoons of baking soda. And you you put the baking soda into the buttermilk and mix it well. In addition, we're going to have 2 tablespoons of melted butter. There again, we're going to put all the liquid stuff together before we put it into the dry. And you also add 2 tablespoons of molasses. You want to mix this well together. The baking soda is going to make the buttermilk foam, as you can see. This is foaming a little bit. So even before I get the molasses all mixed in, I have to dump it in there. Now I have no idea how many tin cans I need, so I got quite a few together. And you have to grease your tin cans well. I would suggest when you're greasing your tin cans you be very careful. I actually cut myself a little bit because I tried to do my whole hand, and the edges of tin cans can be very sharp. So I just got a different technique and didn't go around and around but went up and down, and then I didn't cut myself. You want to get this well mixed. Now if you want to figure out, you can steam in any pot that will hold the tin cans. It's a good idea to hold the tin cans off the bottom of the pot. You can do that either with a rack or crumple up some aluminum foil. Alright. Now you only fill the tin cans 2/3 full. This is a fairly thick dough. I'm going to do a little different. So I would tamp it down well. Once you have it in as then you cover the dough with a circle of wax paper. Take a piece of tin foil. Now I just folded mine in half. You're going to want to put this tightly over the top of the tin can. And then you're going to want to take a rubber band and make it tight. Then you take the tin can, and I'm going to use my Instapot set at slow cooker, and I've already put a rack in here and some water. I'm going to put the tin cans in here, and then I'm going to add additional water so that it's 3/4 up to the level of the dough, not the top of the can, but the level of the dough. And then we're going to allow it to cook for 2 hours. After it's done cooking, then we'll come back in a little bit and see how it comes out. So I'll continue to fill these cans, and then we'll continue the video as soon as the bread is done. So I have the cans of bread in my Instapot set as a slow cooker, and we're waiting for the time to run down. As you can see, the steam, they're covered, and hopefully in 20 minutes or so we'll have hot bread for lunch. So the bread is done, and you take the cans out of the steamer and you let the steam release from the foil, and you end up with a bread that looks like this. Now I tasted the bread. It's fairly dense, not super sweet, but good flavor and definitely cooked well. Just give me a minute and we'll See about taking this off. Look at the bread, and you'll see that it's risen to the top of the can. Take the foil off. Then you just take it out of the can, let it cool off, and then you can freeze the bread if you want, if you don't want to use it right away. You can also add raisins to this batter and make it a little sweeter. But all in all, I think the experiment of making steam bread has turned out well. Now my little cookbook here, I'd like to make it's from a place called Home, H.O.M.E.E. And it is an association that came together to create workshops and places for people to get together and learn how to make extra money. So this little cookbook has a dozen recipes in here of different kinds of steam bread. So it will be an interesting experiment for me to continue to try out different kinds of steamed bread.